Hey guys, welcome back. So today, while out and about, I passed this on the side of the road. It was in some tall grass, kind of slumped over. Don't know anything about it, have no idea what it may have been powering or kind of what led to it being discarded the way that it was. All I can tell from it is that it's mostly complete. So worst case, it's a good parts machine. But before tearing it down, I do want to kind of go through it and figure out what's making this thing sick and potentially fix it. Now, before digging in too far, there's a few things I do want to take a look at right away. First one being the recoil. The dogs are not engaging, so that's going to make troubleshooting a little bit more difficult. And on the back side here, this here weighs quite a bit and just makes kind of working with this engine kind of awkward. So I'm gonna actually just start with this and see if I can't get it off and then move on to that recoil. So let me get you set up in a stand and get going on this thing. Supposed to pop out like that, so guessing maybe a little bit of lube is needed, or maybe just loosen that bolt a bit. Looks like someone may have just over-lubed a little bit. It's just a thick grease. It should really be a thin one here. All right, don't ask me. It took a little while, little doing, so I actually had to bring this inside, wash these components and the dogs with like warm water and soap, just to get some of that grease off there. Anyway, I don't know how long this will last like this. It's still not working great. But I think it's good enough, at least to move on. Wow, that's shocking. Someone would throw away an engine that works. I didn't see much smoke from the engine. It did sound like it was maybe a little rich. I'm not sure, but it stalled. So let me try it again. Wow, I was not expecting that at all. I was hoping for it, but didn't really expect it. So yeah, it runs. So we know it has spark. It's got timing. The engine didn't sound too good, especially at higher RPMs. There's definitely something wrong. Potentially it's running rich, or maybe there is an issue with the top end. So I'm gonna get a compression tester on it and just see where we're at. And I'm gonna do a leak down test. It's pretty wet. Definitely running rich. Not too good. I would expect that this probably has a compression release, but wouldn't expect 30, closer to 60. So yeah, I'm thinking we got a pretty big leak in the top end. So let me get the leak down tester hooked up. So I'm just gonna try to gain access to the flywheel. I wanna see the position of the flywheel and try to position it right at top dead center, so that way when I pressurize it, the engine won't spin. Yeah, man. Okay, I got the gauge zeroed out, and I'm at top dead center. So I'm just going to pressurize the cylinder and see where we land. About 20%. Definitely coming from the exhaust. Maybe a little bit on the intake. And some from the crankcase. So 20% isn't terrible. I mean, ideally it should be 10% or lower. And what I heard too is when I first plugged in the hose, the leak down was quite a bit higher. It was around 80%. I could hear it pouring out of the exhaust, and then the exhaust kind of seated under pressure and it went down to 20%, but it was still leaking. So I'm going to start with just checking the clearance. Maybe it's as simple as that. Otherwise, we'll have to lap that valve. There's just 4 bolts holding this cover on. The top one's pretty hard to get to, so I had to, well, I got that off already just to spare you guys, but I had to use one of these guys to get it off. All right, here's a close-up view. So the intake is this valve, and you can see plenty of clearance, maybe too much. This is the exhaust. It doesn't move. And we're at top dead center, and that's tight. So I'm gonna get my feeler gauges and just see kind of where we're at and make some adjustments. All right, I haven't looked up yet what these are supposed to be, but usually the exhaust is around 7, the intake around 4 or 5. So let's see where we're at. Yeah, there's no clearance. This is 2000s, it doesn't fit. Let's try the intake. Start with 5. 5 feels pretty good. So I don't think I need to touch the intake. Okay, we're right around 6. Let me check a 7, see how that fits. Yeah, 7 is super tight, so I'd say we're somewhere between a 6 and a 7. All right, gonna do this test again. The last time we saw that it went to 80 for about a second, and then I could hear the exhaust valve seating, which would drop it down to 20. So, you know, I didn't lap the valves or do any piston and cylinder work, so I'm not expecting it to be lower than 20 now, but I do want to see that it goes right to 20 instead of 80, valve seats, then 20. Okay, perfect. So one very noticeable difference, when I first picked this up, of course the recoil didn't work, and I was turning the engine over this way just to see if it had compression, and it really had next to nothing. Now, very noticeable the change.
This is so hard.
Yeah, so as you can see, it has noticeably improved compression now. So the engine didn't sound too good at high RPMs. Potentially it was the lack of compression with that valve issue, or maybe it is running rich, but I'm gonna put it back together, we'll bring it out and try it again. All right, that's pretty good. It's not running rich like I thought. Actually, at low RPM, it seems to be starving a bit for fuel, but it sounds pretty good, all things considered. It was tossed on the side of the road. So I guess where do I want to go from here? Probably the carb. Clean that up, see if it makes any difference. It's pretty fresh gas. Some debris came out of the carb, but no water. Looks pretty good in here. So there's really not much to take off on this carb other than the main jet, and the emulsion tube is not removable, and that smaller one is probably the idle circuit. So I'll just make sure those are clean and just put the whole thing in the cleaner just to make sure it's nice and clean, and run a wire through all these holes. So I was just trying to find the biggest wire gauge bit that fits. This one is quite snug, but I think it fits. It wasn't that dirty, but, well, on the inside. On the outside it was. Cleaned up pretty well. One thing I did notice is that the freeze plugs, Welsh plugs, whatever you want to call them, they're missing. Now this one doesn't look like it was ever drilled out. It doesn't go anywhere, so not a big deal. And this one, you know, honestly, I'm not sure how important it is, but it vents through there. So I think it's just a vent for the bowl. Probably just minimizes the chance of something splashing out. Not really sure, but I don't have any, and I don't think it's that important for it to run right. Okay, that's it. It's a very simple carb. I'm kind of doubtful it's going to make much of a difference, and hopefully I didn't actually drill that jet out, because if I did, it'll run too rich. For those of you wondering, this is the model number, the bottom row, and the top row, I believe, is the date code. So 08-10-21, I believe that's 2008, October 21st. I degreased it again, and you know, this thing was just packed with grease, and it didn't help that I sprayed WD-40 in it. You know, I looked up this part here. I think it's called a friction disc or a friction plate. There's not supposed to be any lubricant here because, as it sounds in the name, you need friction for this to almost stick just a bit, just enough to get those to go in and out. Seems to be working better, so I'll put it on again, see how long it lasts. Good enough. We'll do one last test here. I did throw the airbox back on with an air filter, and I turned the idle screw up a little bit. You know, I think it was set too low. I also hooked up a tachometer, so I'm just going to check the RPMs. You know, at low speed, I don't want it to go below 1800. I think that's generally what Briggs recommends, maybe even higher for some engines. And on the high side, I want it to be around 3600. was pretty good. I was able to turn the choke off right away. It ran well at low speed and at high speed. And the tachometer seemed to be, the numbers on the tachometer seemed pretty good. On the high side, it was just below 3,600. On the low side, it was 1,900. I tried lowering it a bit more, but it didn't like that. So I just set it back to 1,900. Anyway, I'm guessing, the person who threw this out was probably having issues with power due to that exhaust valve kind of hanging a bit. And when the recoil went, that was it. Why fuss with it? Obviously you can go down and buy a new engine for about 99 bucks, and I'm sure that's what they did. But in this case, a free engine beats a $99 engine, and it really is a good setup. I mean, the throttle control has a low oil sensor, and plenty of availability on parts if you need it. Anyway, I thought this would be a quick video, maybe a fun one to do, and hope this helped you. Thanks for watching.